Good morning, all.
Hello.
Time appropriate greetings. I didn't see an agenda posted on the Hyperledger wiki for today's call yet. Does anybody have? I know that Matt Nelson, he's been leading these, and then Francisco sometimes does also. I don't know if I know Matt's not going to be here. I'm not sure if Francisco is.
Not sure. I also checked and the agenda was missing.
So Matt shared something around one proposition on Discord, split Besu Discord channel into private and public networks. Yeah, let me just find the link.
But I don't think it's an agenda, it's just a topic.
Yeah,
But
it's not
yeah.
the agenda, but at least it puts
I found it. I put it in chat. Oh, hang on. I'll copy a clean link. So maybe what we do is develop the agenda ad hoc because it doesn't look like we've got one. Maybe we'll wait till 5 after for other folks to show up. And while we do that, I'll kind of templatize the prayer call into an agenda for this one. Hey, everybody. Hey, J Flo. Matthew, good to see you.
Hi, Justin. How are you?
Doing well. You can tell that I don't use the Hyperledger. I don't add new docs to the Hyperledger wiki too often because I'm not seeing where I add in agendas. See edit.
The last one is here.
Yeah, 815. That's the one that I'm trying to copy and just kind of replace. Maybe since I'm logged in with GitHub, I don't have privilege to add to the agendas. Can somebody try to go into the agenda section and add a new? Maybe this is just the user I have doesn't have the ability to add. I see create. Maybe that's what it is. Ah, okay. It's create, not add. When was Friday the 20? I'm just gonna put the wrong number in here and we'll figure it out in post. Okay. So there's the template version. Housekeeping, antitrust notice, meetings being recorded. Please mute unless you're speaking. If you have a question, raise your hand. And I think we can add Matt's agenda item.
I wondered if I could add a small item to the agenda.
By all means, just drop it on there. I think we can collaboratively edit.
Yeah, so I'll paste in a shared Google link that I think so I know Matt has access to and has commented on, and Jason Frame has also commented on. So I think people have access to see it, but if not, then let me know and I'll see what I can do. This relates to some discussions I've had with Matt, and it was mainly just to sort of raise awareness of it, not for a lengthy discussion on the call today.
This is great,
Okay.
Matthew. One of the things I'm going to be working on is revisions to CI/CD process. So thank you for this. I will keep it in mind and keep you in the loop as to how that's going.
Thank you. Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, Matt and I had some sort of chats on Zoom in this area, and it's a sort of a just a bunch of things that as a sort of commercial entity that supports Besu have sort of come up as we've been thinking about how best to do that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Oh dear. Let's see. Google Docs widget is being difficult. There we go. Okay. I could start with the release updates. We have an upcoming release that's 23.7.2, which is a decent sized release because it's a collection of change that accumulated in main while we did an RC type of release, cherry pick RC 23.7.1. So 23.7.2 is actually a fairly sizable release, and it's been burning in since last Tuesday. And to the best of my knowledge, not having spoken directly with the folks that are doing DevWatch at Consensus, I believe 23.7.2 has proven to be stable. And it's I don't see any reason not to go ahead and release today. Does anybody have any feedback about that? Have we had any anecdotal evidence about 23.7.2's reliability or stability?
I looked into it 20 minutes ago, checked all of the canaries that we had running, and they're all stable and keeping up with head.
Awesome. So it sounds like we are clear to release that, and that'll be released today then. I'll also post something on Discord to verify that for folks who aren't in the this EMEA contributors call. And Matt's not here to discuss the private public channel split of Discord. So if you want to take a moment to review that, we can check that proposal out and then discuss here. Let's take maybe just. Sorry, I muted myself mid-sentence. Just take a couple minutes to read through his proposal. Personally, reading through it, I see where Matt's coming from, and that we get a lot of noise on, maybe not noise, but potentially confusion about questions that apply to mainnet Ethereum versus private permission chains that occur on just the main Besu channel. I could see how there would be some benefit to segregating that traffic, but I also could see the point of the point of Matthew and Simon, that it's going to be potentially just adding to the confusion. People won't know where to post. They won't necessarily have a good distinction between mainnet usages and private network usages. I think I might be more inclined to have like a Besu mainnet or a Besu Ethereum. Like that way we could segregate, like staking specific questions somewhere, more so than trying to segregate all other use cases into another channel. But either way, personally, I think it might not, it might cause more confusion than it solves.
On my side, when I look at the Discord, clearly, at this moment, I see a lot of questions regarding private network. And as you said, I think it had a lot of confusion, because for me, when we have an issue related to private network, I think maybe some user can not be sure if it's really an issue from the private part or from the mainnet part, so they will not be sure if it can impact also their node or not. And also as a developer, I think it's really complex. If I want just, for example, to look today at the mainnet part, I think it's very complex to navigate in the Discord to find what are the issue, where are the issues related to the mainnet, and where are the issue related to the private. So I need to scroll a lot. I need to check between two messages, and I would prefer a split to help me read the Discord and help me to find the mainnet issue, and maybe helping more user more easily. But it's my personal opinion.
What do you think about making better use of threads? I think a lot of times basic contributors and maintainers will reply to a message and have a main channel conversation. If we were to make better use of threads when we're trying to reply to user issues, we could tag it, because you get an opportunity to label the thread that you create. You could say, you could prefix it with private and then the topic, and then have the thread there, or mainnet and have the topic there. It might be a way of segregating the traffic without having to create different channels.
I think we are using already a lot the thread. Maybe not perfectly, but I think we are using very well the thread. As I see a lot of threads that we are trying to start when there is an issue, and we are not to share all of the discussion in the main thread. But I still think that, for example, if I want to retrieve an old discussion related to mainnet to check if we already talked about that or something like that, I still to navigate into a lot of private issues, and maybe have a chance and find again this mainnet discussion. Yeah, I don't think it's clear, but maybe I'm also only one to see that. But yeah, for me, it's a two big topics. In the doc, we decided to split these two parts into two sections, and I'm not sure why we'll not have this kind of section in the Discord. But
So I think from my point of view, having looked at the docs a lot over the last sort of 6 months, that I think the public-private split is really useful, because it gives you a very clear place to go based on your sort of use case. What it does sort of highlight is that there is a bunch of common stuff, like common APIs that aren't specific to public or private, that sort of mean I spend most of my time looking at private permission chain related things, but often I'm in the public section because it has a lot of the common, I think maybe a lot of the ETH function specifications are in there for the APIs and things. So I think it's really useful having that, especially the private section is really useful because you're going to find the kubeft stuff and how to set up all of the account and node permissioning, that kind of stuff. But it has its usefulness is sort of limited when you hit a lot of the common function. And I was thinking the same when I was thinking about the Discord channel split. If you want to ask about how to start a node with log level set to trace, do you put that in the private channel or the permission channel, or is there like a common sort of channel as well for or like basics or something?
What would be useful is to be able to kick threads from one to the other. Like if it starts in Besu private, but it needs to go to Besu main, or starts in Besu main and needs to go to Besu private. I'm not savvy enough with Discord to know if we can actually move threads like that. But that I think would be a way to help clarify where things should land, and the ability to fix errors to keep the signal high.
Yeah, I agree. I went looking yesterday to see what options you have on a message in a channel, and I couldn't see anything around moving. It may be like an administrative thing, but I don't get the impression that feature is there. Because you're right. Otherwise, as soon as someone puts something in the wrong place, you end up with that whole sort of, do we carry on here, or do we start a new thread on the right channel?
Just doing a quick Google search, it looks like there should be a way to do it. And like you said, it might be an administrator privilege thing.
Yeah, I did wonder if there were things that moderators could do that regular users couldn't.
So maybe we will not have Besu public and Besu private, but just Besu at a subsection Besu private. So if you are sure that the question is about private network, you will put that in the Besu private channel. And if it's more a common issue, you will put that in Besu or something like that.
I think that sounds reasonable. I think that's what Matt's discussing.
Yeah, okay.
Like this one, like the idea of having like one main channel, and then for some private questions, like some private network questions, use the private network channel.
I don't know if we can have a bot that detects some keyword like QBFT, IBFT or something like that. And if a user asks something related to that in the main channel, he will have a response from a bot to say, move this message to Besu private or something like that. And maybe blocking this message in the Besu main channel, maybe too much, but and just having a response to say, ask this question directly into the Besu private channel.
So just to be clear, is the thinking that there would be three channels or two?
I think two. Oh.
So not like a Besu basics and then Besu private and Besu public, but just Besu, something like Besu public and Besu private.
I don't know. Maybe three will be better, yes.
I don't know. It might be hard.
Yeah.
So we could propose. Justin, do you want to?
I was just going to throw in my vote for two. I think two makes sense, and if there's general-ish type questions, they should probably be answerable from either, and then we can move threads, assuming we figure that out. But not a strong opinion.
Why don't we, since there's not anywhere close to a quorum here today, why don't we just go ahead and put up a poll for 2-channel or 3-channel on the Discord and see what we come up with? Or 1-channel, 2-channel, 3-channel.
Great, love it.
Okay, I think that seems like a good enough action item for that, and we can I can take point on having that communication, setting up that poll. Matthew, do you want to discuss the enterprise releases doc that you have out there?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So like I say, I'm not suggesting that there be sort of a lengthy discussion on the call, especially, but I thought it was useful, I guess, just to raise awareness of the fact that it's a sort of a conversation that Matt and I have had on and off for the last few weeks, and he suggested that at some point it would be good, given that, as you can probably see in the doc, that he and I've sort of put some comments in, and he's chipped some comments in, that maybe we're getting to the point where the wider community would have some views on it, and I guess to give you an example of a possible concrete outcome that I think he and I both sort of agreed on as a possible starting point here. One thing we thought was that release testing that includes permission chains might be an area that we could collaborate on a bit. I should give probably a few seconds background to it. So I work for a company called Kaleido, and personally I've been getting involved in Besu and getting up to speed with the code base and really enjoying that. And we also offer commercial support for Besu. So we are sort of bridging between an open source product and customers who want commercial support and stability and the kind of things that they want. Matt was very open to us working together to see if any of the sort of the challenges of doing that, any of the pain points, were things that we could sort of collaborate on and over time maybe improve. So yeah, coming back to one of the first possible outcomes of this sort of discussion was that, and you can see this towards the bottom of the document, we've put some sort of possible actions and outcomes. Doing some permissioned chain testing as part of the release burn-in process, which I think is something that's not done today. I think it's mainly running nodes that sync with mainnet and do that for a period of time. That was an area where I think certainly from our side, our point of view would give us, the kind of customers we support, a bit more confidence that a given release has been tested with a sort of a permission chain setup of some sort. And that was just one example of something that might come out of this. And there are things around, can we as sort of contributors to Besu in Kaleido, can we help with the any overhead of doing that during release time? Are there financial costs associated with spinning up environments to do that burn-in testing, things of that nature? So I think there's a whole variety of things that might come out of that. But the last time he and I spoke about it, I think we both sort of thought it was worth just partly highlighting to the community a bit more broadly, seeing if others have things they want to contribute to this in terms of other areas they think could be improved, highlighting errors that I've put in here. So I basically wrote this and with a view to making sure I had a good understanding of how Besu release sort of process worked today. And so others are certainly welcome to chip in and highlight things I've got wrong or misconstrued. So that was really all I wanted to mention on the call today, just to, I guess, to raise awareness of it.
I think what's really interesting about what you're proposing is that it could be a more public version of the burn-in that we're like currently we're using consensus resources for burn-in, and it's not public facing just because right. By the nature of it being consensus is cloud resources. I could see that being offering more transparency and just insight into the process. I think that's a huge benefit to have a public burn-in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is something you see from customers who are trying to run in production is their focus is predominantly on sort of stability and visibility of what's in a release, things like the change log, what changes they should be aware of. And I think seeing the release sort of burn-in testing sort of results and what's happened with that, I think contributes to that.
Are you and Matt going to continue forward with next steps on this, or is that something that you want to try to define on the contributor call? Or
yeah, I think probably so what I'll probably do is I'll just ping Matt and mention that I just raised it for awareness on the call, because like I say, he and I both thought that was probably a good next step. And I'll take some guidance on him on where we go from here. But yeah, so I'll update Matt, and I'm sure he'll listen back to this recording anyway. So I'm happy to take next steps, whichever, whatever they are. There's no concrete proposal to put to the community yet. I guess that might be what comes out of it, is perhaps the first sort of concrete proposal to then be discussed on another call, and any voting if necessary.
I think that sounds great. Does anybody have any more input they want to have before we move on? Okay, silence equals assent. We've got a carryover from the next and last item of other business, which is the proposal quarterly releases from main by default. And we've been implementing this for 2370 kind of on a trial basis. We had 2370, which ended up not being released due to a burn-in fail, and a cherry pick of 23 of the fix into 2371, which was released. And we're continuing with this strategy of having quarterly specific release branches that we release from for 2372 for this entire quarter. So far, it seems to be going pretty smoothly. We don't block main at all, so that's a nice benefit. What's not great about it is that there's not a clear. We do the best we can to provide a clear chain of what's released back to what was in main, but we don't actually end up, since we don't actually end up releasing from main, it's there's less of a clear chain of sign off. It's all there, but it's a little more fiddly to have that provenance for what actually gets released as it relates to what got merged into main. But apart from that, I think that has been going fairly smoothly, with just a little added overhead on the release side. Actually, I've done 23.7. I've done all of the quarterly releases personally, so I can comment on this that it's been going pretty smoothly. It's a little extra overhead to have to deal with the extra release branch, but I mean, apart from that, I think the benefits really kind of outweigh any of the additional cost of release, because not blocking main, I think, is huge. It takes a lot of the time pressure off for doing a release. Like when we're releasing from main, we need to get that done as quickly as possible to not block other contributors. So I think that's a great benefit. I don't think we have updated Simon's proposal to avoid to what we're doing currently, which is releasing from release specific branches, but we'll get something up on the wiki describing the current iteration. But yeah, so far I think it's been working fairly well, and once we get it up on a wiki doc, we can probably put that onto Discord and just kind of have a postmortem for how the quarter has gone, since we're pretty far into the quarter at this point. September will be the let's see, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, so this October will be the next quarter. So hopefully we can do a postmortem on the current quarter next month, on the next Hyperledger call for Europe and Americas time zone. That's about it. Does anybody have any input or feedback or something they'd like to discuss about the current trial quarterly process we're doing?
I had I had a question just so I understand it properly. So the 2372 release, that's so a couple of questions. Is that 2371 plus just a small number of fixes? And the sort of related question is, what's the decision for a 2372 and a 2373 versus just carrying on in main and waiting for the next quarterly release?
Yeah, in spirit, with the current process is we want to in spirit release from main. So what we're doing is we're taking a cut of main and merging it on top of with as little rebasing or rewriting as necessary to get what currently is in main onto the release branch. And ideally, when we haven't had cherry pick releases or things that we've had to deal with, it's just a matter of cutting a PR that is merge main into this release branch. And the prior release branch was cut from main, so it should be a fairly clean merge into it. So it should be pretty straightforward what that history, that provenance is. It gets a little fiddly when we have cherry picks like we had for 2371, which is what our current situation is. But I mean, in spirit, we're releasing from main by taking main and making the release branch, the corresponding release branch, have no diff from main at the time of the release.
I see. So 2372 is basically main at that point.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah, makes sense.
That's all we have on the agenda for now. I think we need to look at the metrics review. So just open forum and future topics. Does anybody have anything they want to talk about or would like to discuss at future contributor calls? Well, I think Matt will be back for the next APAC call. And in the absence of anything else we want to talk about, we can just give 25 minutes back to everybody.
Sounds good to me.
All right. See you guys later.
Thanks,
Bye.
Thanks.
You bet.
Bye.
Bye-bye.